My name is Chris Stone. I'm the creator of Blood and Bone China, and you're listening to GenreTainment.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of GenreTainment over here on SciFiPulseRadio.com. We're your hosts, Marx
and Julie. On GenreTainment, we give you interviews with writers, directors, producers, and actors in both independent and not-so-independent creations. And for today's show, we welcome back filmmaker and web series creator Blake Calhoun. He's created award-winning web series like Pink, the WB's Exposed, and Continuum. He chats with us about those projects, plus he tells us about his new vampire thriller feature-length film Phobia, and his upcoming web series Morganville, which is based on the best-selling book series by the same name. It also has vampires and even a former Buffy the Vampire Slayer actress who will be starring in it.
Ooh.
More on that soon.
Cool. And listen up, web series creators or indie filmmaking hopefuls. Calhoun also shares some tips on web series and Kickstarter.
Now, before we get started with our interview, we do want to point out that the music you just heard at the beginning of the show was a snippet from the theme song for our web series, Reality on Demand. It's a song composed and performed by our friend T-Sean Hardy. You can find our web series at realityondemandseries.com.
Now let's get to our interview with writer, director, producer Blake Calhoun. Welcome back to the show, Blake.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, needless to say, you are a very experienced web series creator, with Pink and Exposed, Continuum, and you have another series coming up. First, let's check in on the status of Continuum. I think when you last time spoke to us, Season 1 had wrapped and Season 2 had not started yet, but now Season 2 is online.
It has. Season 2 actually premiered on JTS.TV back in April through their website and then on Roku boxes, and I think that was a pretty successful launch for them. And now we're rolling it out in a wider release, ad supported on YouTube via Sci-Fi Riot, the new Sci-Fi channel on YouTube, and also our own YouTube channel at Continuum, the series.
Great. For people who haven't seen Continuum, let's talk a little bit about what Continuum is about.
Well, Continuum is about a space traveler, a young female space traveler who wakes up in a spaceship, doesn't know who she is or where she is and why she's there, and figures out pretty quickly her only means of communication is with a computer that is controlling the ship and ultimately her life. So it's got a little bit of 2001-esque vibe going, kind of the movie Moon vibe, and probably a little bit of Alien thrown in there, just for good measure. Not comparing it to all those great shows, but that's kind of.
But that's the mood. It's more those than say Red Dwarf.
Yeah, it's dramatic, and set in a spaceship. So that's one thing that I do think is pretty cool about the show. Most sci-fi today, it seems like, is not set in space. It's more apocalyptic. Worlds exploding, which I like that too, but I kind of miss Battlestar Galactica and even the Star Treks where stuff is set in space.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seems to go in cycles, doesn't it?
It does. I agree.
Yeah.
The other thing
you're ahead of the curve, so
yeah,
for the next cycle.
Right, and the two things about Continuum is, one, let me go ahead and state, we are not the Canadian sci-fi show.
What? That's it. This interview is over.
That's it.
Yes.
We were misled. No, just kidding.
I think that's actually happened a couple times.
Okay,
oh.
Bless your heart.
Blog interviews, there's some confusion out there, and I'll say that it's actually been good in a weird way. It's like the old saying, just I like the press, just spell my name right. We have gotten a lot of people hitting our site and our show thinking it was the other one, but then liking it. And then we also have a lot of trolls. So,
they're unavoidable.
Rachel Nichols, she's in the other show. So anyway,
but Continuum does have some actors that people who follow web series are going to recognize.
Yeah, Melanie Murkowski for sure, and Taryn O'Neill. Although you don't see Taryn, she's the voice of the computer. But Melanie was Lonely Girl, and then she was on the CBS web series. That name escapes me right now. Harper's Island.
Oh, yes, yes.
Oh, yeah.
And Taryn, of course, has been in a bunch of sci-fi shows, and she was in Compulsion's Bernie Sue's show and a bunch of other good stuff. And then Brad Hawkins was in Pink. He's mainly known more as a character actor from television, but he's done a handful of web series as well.
Mm-hmm.
But one other thing I was going to say, besides us being tied into the TV show Continuum, since last we spoke at the IAW TV Awards, we were up for a couple awards, and we ended up winning Best Editing for the show for season 1. So that was great.
Oh, that's great.
Mhm.
Congratulations.
And we also won, I'm sorry, I say we because it was the production design. We won Best Production Design as well. So it's nice to have a few of those accolades, and hopefully that helps continue to build the audience too.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
great.
excellent. I'm a member of the IWTV, so I'm just going to pretend that my votes,
Tipped it over.
Tipped it
Yeah.
over. Yeah.
Wow, I appreciate that. Thank you.
We can go with that story.
And as you mentioned, it's on a ship, so I'm sure that was really a pain to have done. I mean, that's not easy to build a ship set.
No, the ship set was challenging in and of itself, but what was really more challenging than anything was the visual effects. And I learned the hard way. I had done visual effects before, but we shot the show on 2 Canon 7D DSLRs, which at the time was great. And I still like the cameras, but we got in a little over our head on all the green screen work that need to be done, and the cameras, the technical aspects of doing really proper keying and such. And so the visual effects ended up just being a beast. And our guys that I worked with at Element X Creative, Chad Briggs and his team, really, really, really saved the day there.
You had a successful Kickstarter with your upcoming web series, Morganville, a vampire web series based on a series of books. So can you tell us a little bit about that show, upcoming show?
And tell
sure.
us that they don't sparkle.
Yeah, please tell us they don't sparkle.
The vampires do not sparkle in Morganville.
Woo!
Morganville is a pretty interesting project for me for a variety of reasons. One is it's taken me in a direction I've really not done more. It's a young adult book series. So it does fall in that Twilight world, but the way Morganville is, and the writer Rachel Kane, she always says she's more, her stories are more Stephen King than like the way Stephanie Meyer writes. Not that there's anything wrong with Stephanie Meyer, but that's just, hers are more supernatural and a little creepier, a little scarier. There's not a lot of romance. It's more supernatural character study, truthfully, set in a college town. But yeah, it was great. I teamed up with Rachel. I got introduced to her by Felicia Day. Probably never heard of her. I can tell you a little bit about her if you want.
Tell us more about this Felicia Day character.
Yeah, she's a mutual friend of ours, and she knew Rachel and knew me and knew that we both lived in Texas. And so she kind of played digital matchmaker in a way and got us together. And we tried to go some traditional routes initially with the show. And these books have been optioned around Hollywood for several years. But because of the nature of Hollywood just in general with vampires, and when they get on a subject, let's say it's Westerns or vampires or babies or whatever it is, they always say there's too many of them and they don't want to make another one, but then they go ahead and make another one. But for whatever reason with this show, they haven't wanted to take it on in a Hollywood mode. It's been in development. It just hadn't been produced. And so with the dawn, so to speak, of Kickstarter, Rachel owned the IP, and she works with Penguin, the book publisher, and they decided to do it themselves, which I actually love, the entrepreneurial spirit. I mean, she got a little bit of that from Felicia, obviously, with Felicia and the Guild, and I think she probably got a little input from her too to go out on her own, and teamed up with me, and we're going to basically do a pilot. It's going to be more than a pilot. It can be a standalone show. We're going to do 6 episodes that are 8 minutes long each. So we'll have about 45 to 50 minutes of content in the end, and it can be a standalone web series, but could also be a traditional TV pilot or a proof of concept.
Oh, that's cool.
Interesting.
Excellent.
And whether we pitch that to the networks afterwards or to various folks, or whether we just continue it as a web series, will kind of depend on how it turns out.
Mm-hmm. It's pretty exciting. Well, I haven't read the books. So do these vampires differ in any significant way from traditional vampires? Just curious.
Well, it's the story is a little different. It's the book is called Morganville, and that's where it's a college town in Texas, a small Texas town. And basically, this town was created by a vampire called Amelie because the vampires are dying, and this entire town is run by vampires. But people that come in don't realize it, and then once you're there, you can't leave. Sort of like the Hotel California.
You can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave.
Correct. The vampires end up running these people, and they're trying to find a cure for this disease that's killing all the vampires.
Ah.
But the story is about a girl named Claire who is a young genius, more or less. She's 16 years old and going to school early. And it's her encounters with these various other characters in the town. Shane, she ends up moving in with these kids named Shane and Michael and Eve. And it has a very Buffy vibe to it. It's very sarcastic. The dialogue is kind of Whedon-esque in a sense. It's kind of like Diablo Cody meets Joss Whedon as far as the way the sniping back and forth. It's pretty fun.
That sounds cool.
That sounds very good.
And then there's a lot of sarcasm, and you're not taking yourself too seriously. It's fun vampire killing.
I like it already.
Yeah, so we're now in talks with a couple of distributors and a couple other folks to maybe come on board even before we shoot. So that could be interesting. And also, I think we may end up being one of a handful, if not the only, web series based on a pre-existing book series that sold millions of copies around the world before. I mean, it's almost like a movie, the way Hollywood likes to do movies. In other words,
cool.
Based on books, and you have a built-in audience and all that kind of thing. So we're excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, I can't think of too many examples.
No. How closely will the web series follow the book?
Well, there's 15 books, so there's a ton of material. The web series, the pilot, is going to be based on book 1, which is called Glass Houses, or Glass House, and it will leak over in a couple, maybe book 2 and 3 too, to pull in a couple characters that the fans really like that don't appear until later.
Okay.
Now I gotta check out the books because I mean we're big Joss Whedon fans, so just saying that.
Yeah, I'm just don't really hate me if you don't think it. It's not. I mean, it's not Joss Whedon, but it's got a really fun, sarcastic
sort of
bite to it. No pun intended.
And we're nerds who like to read.
We have Amber Benson attached to star in the show. Speaking
that's
of
fantastic.
Amber Benson is going to play Amelie in Morganville. Between that and the rollout of Continuum and other things I've got going on, there are there's a movie I did called Phobia, and it's actually a vampire movie too.
I'm noticing a theme.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, here's what's funny is I had never done anything with vampires, and I didn't write these, and so that's not where my writing usually takes me. It's just purely coincidence that it's happened this way. Purely coincidence.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit more about that. I believe it's a Victorian era vampire thriller.
It is. It's called Phobia, and it comes out on video on demand on cable TV. I think it'll be on Dish and AT&T U-Burst and pretty much any cable outlet in the U.S. or Canada on September 1st. It is a Victorian era vampire thriller. Erica Learson plays the lead character in Phobia. Her name's Dr. Leslie Parker. She is probably best known for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake with her and Jessica Biel. Jessica Biel starred in it.
Uh-huh.
And she was also in the Wrong Turn movies. But it's a story about a female doctor in 1885, which was really rare, that actually had to dress as a man to go to school in Paris. And ultimately, she encounters people that have phobias, and one of her patients believes he's turning into a vampire. So it's kind of an interesting twist. And the story that unfolds is a mystery because murders happen, and they're trying to determine whether he's the one doing it and whether he knows he's doing it or whether there's really vampires. And it was a tricky project to do because it was low budget. It was Victorian era, set in Paris and San Francisco, shot at Dallas, Texas.
I'll say those are pretty specific time and locations, and trying to do that on a budget's really tough.
It was. Luckily, there's a lot of Victorian homes in Dallas, and so we were pretty good there. And then we had a great wardrobe designer, costume designer, a woman named Deborah Gerard, and she does a lot of steampunk and that kind of thing. And so she did all custom original wardrobe for the show, which was amazing. And that actually makes it feel and look very realistic. Because without that, you got to nail the period in a period drama. Otherwise, it doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
And the trailer is now, we just released the trailer last week for the upcoming release. And the movie will be out on DVD as well on October 15th. And it'll be everywhere. It'll be Redbox and Walmart. So I'm pretty excited. It'll be a pretty wide release for an indie film.
Oh, that's really, really good.
That would be.
And, you know, I think that's kind of cool because there's been a lot of history of, like, people suffering from vampire-type mental illnesses, but I think they're vampires. Some of them do some pretty disturbing things. So
yeah, well,
Well, people had physical ailments where they thought that that's where that came from.
Well, yeah, that's
like
actually what I was going to bring
porphyria.
up. The writer of this is a woman named Ann Gibson. She's also the executive producer, and I meant to say she kind of does some fun rewriting of history here because in the movie Sigmund Freud is in there, and also a famous doctor named Dr. Charcot, and around the late 1800s, turn of the century, hysteria was a big thing, and this movie has a lot to do with hysteria and hypnosis, and that's how Freud actually started getting into his various theories by using hypnosis and such. So we use real character or real people with kind of a bent, not reality-based narrative wrapped around them, so it's kind of fun.
Yeah, there are some funny diagnoses with, hysteria, and particularly women, and, revolving around women's sexuality and things like that. So they were thought to be mentally ill if they, had fun doing it.
Yeah. Ties into the witches a little bit too there,
Yeah.
it does.
But yeah,
So happy, well-adjusted woman. There must be something wrong with her.
it's cool. It's a fun little movie. It's not what you expect because it's a genre bender. It's a vampire thriller. It's a murder mystery. It's got some horror in it. It'll probably be, the DVD will be marketed more as a horror film, although it's not a hard horror film at all. It's probably a PG-13 movie. There's limited violence and there's no cussing and that kind of thing. It's just kind of a fun movie. It takes you on an interesting little journey.
It's more of a psychological horror.
That's the kind I like.
There's definitely psychological aspects to it, psychological thriller. And then there's some traditional horror film setups, which is fun too.
It's cool. Now I'm starting to see a pattern where like you have your Pink and Continuum and Morganville and Phobia. They all have like female leads. Is that something you're drawn to, or you just happen to have fallen into that?
Just happened to fallen into it. I've had that question asked before, and I obviously
just tell them it's because you're very enlightened.
Yes, that's it. Thank you. Yes. I don't know. It's just ultimately I'm drawn to stories and characters that for unknown reasons. So why are you drawn to certain topics? And that's just kind of how it's worked out. And I actually did a film. I may have mentioned this in our first interview several years back. It was an action film called Killing Down. And the lead character in that was Cherie Wilson, who was best known for, she was in Dallas and she was on Walker, Texas Ranger, opposite Chuck Norris. Mm-hmm. But that she played an FBI agent, and it was a female lead there too. So I don't really know what's going on.
Mark's writes strong female characters too.
Yeah,
try to. Yeah.
Obviously, he has a thing for the meek women. So.
I mean, one of my all-time favorite movies is Alien and Alien 2. So there you go.
Yeah.
You got some Ripley action going.
True.
Let's go back to Morganville real quick. So that web series, what's the plan of when you're going to film it and release it? What's the rough plan?
That's kind of being determined right now because I mentioned a few seconds ago that we're talking to some distributors and some more investors potentially. Mm-hmm. Because the Kickstarter was successful. It opened some doors to other people, I think. But in our Kickstarter pitch, and we're going to try to stay true to this, we were going to shoot in October and release it in the spring at some point to be determined, probably the March. But October is rapidly approaching, so that's ambitious. And if some of these other people come on board, it may get pushed a little bit. But I think if all goes correctly, we will shoot this fall. for sure. And the thing is, Rachel's fans of the books are the ones that really made the Kickstarter successful. That is hard, by the way.
Yeah.
I'd contributed, I'd never done one. And being involved with that, we had a great team. Rachel and her assistant, Sarah, myself and a few other folks really worked hard on that. And just the constant tweets and now doing the reward fulfillment and coming up with the rewards. I was really surprised at how much work that is. And I know people may kind of roll their eyes at that, but until you do it, it is really hard work.
I bet so.
But I highly recommend trying Kickstarter, but I've said this several times, and I mean, this is kind of known information, but having a known entity or a known property really helps on Kickstarter. Being a known entity, I should say, or having that property, because I've had some limited success with my different projects, but if I went out there to raise $50,000 to make a new show, I doubt it would fund just based on me. If I went out there and tried to raise money for a new Pink movie or something, it may be successful from that Pink audience, but having that Morganville audience really, really helped. And it was close for us, truthfully.
And I'm sorry, how much was it that you raised?
We raised, our goal was 75,000 and we raised, I think, 81 or 82,000.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah. So, but it's funny, lots of times the way they work out is you set a certain amount and then it's like the last week you somehow rally and you pull it together. Unless you're Zach Braff or one of those guys and they raise multi-millions in a couple weeks. But
Yeah.
they're obviously few and far between.
Or Veronica Mars in the first 6 hours.
Yeah, exactly. But with those, obviously you're mixing traditional famous media folks with grassroots campaigns, and there's a big debate obviously about whether that was good or bad for Kickstarter.
Yeah, we don't quite have that fan base.
No, but I'm so happy about Veronica
With
Mars.
hindsight now, it was probably good for Kickstarter because it brought notoriety to Kickstarter. People now know more about it, but it'd be interesting to know whether those people that contributed to those well-known campaigns have actually supported other smaller projects. That would be interesting. I'm not sure if that information's been released. I'll tell you one thing that we learned though, and this is interesting. Most people think Kickstarter is a non-profit group. They don't realize that, they're all for Zach Braff because they take 7% of everything you make. I believe it's 75, but it's in that range, 5 to 7%. So I'm not saying that's bad at all. I'm just saying a lot of people think that Kickstarter is a non-profit. They're just there to help you get your project.
Oh, I didn't realize people thought that. Nobody does anything out of the kindness of their hearts.
No, not too much. So, but anyway, I think that's good for people to know.
So with Kickstarter, is there any one tip you would give like another filmmaker who wants to try that? One thing you learned that really helped out?
I would say, and this is probably obvious, but make a really good pitch video. I am surprised at how many times I see videos, especially for people that are going to go make a movie, and their pitch videos are terrible. It's like we're going to contribute to you to go make a movie, and that you don't know how to make a pitch video, or you don't record proper audio. This may seem really obvious, but it is surprising to me how many people don't do a good job on that.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I think that's a good point. For sure. And some people don't even do video, and it's like...
Correct. And I believe the number it's a remarkably high, meaning I think only 40% of Kickstarter campaigns make it, but the Kickstarter campaigns with a video, I believe 60% of those make it, and the ones without it, only 30 or 40% make it. So it makes a really big difference.
Well, you're proving you can do a visual medium. So it does make sense.
Yeah, exactly. And then also people want to see you guys, or see the person who is presenting this pitch, and I think it just kind of legitimizes it as well. Makes it more real, more tangible for people to grab onto.
Yeah. Good advice.
The other thing would be, just real briefly, to be prepared to be answering emails and stuff 24 hours a day. I mean, it's really a lot of work. I can't really stress that. I was actually very surprised at how much work it was.
But I think
I don't really like work. So
Yeah, we can tell by your resume.
yeah.
so. One of the interesting things too about all of your work in web series is that you've more than I've seen other people have experimented a lot with how you release your projects. I think with Continuum season 1, I think you premiered it on Facebook first, which is one of the first web series that had done that. Now with season 2, you premiered on JTS first, a subscription service before you went on a YouTube channel. I'm just kind of curious, what do you feel like is a good strategy for web series creators out there? Because I know they're all struggling to figure out how to release.
I still think ultimately it's best to release them over time, and probably just on YouTube. I mean, for the most part, for the average show is what I'm trying to say. I have done with Exposed. We did sort of the Netflix release where you do binge viewing. We did them. We had 9 or 10 episodes, I believe, and we did 5 one week and 5 the next week. And in my opinion, because you're not a show like Arrested Development or whatever, it's good to continually have new stuff hitting and to continually be able to tweet about it or Facebook about it or get buzz going about it. And then not to mention with YouTube, the more activity you have on your channel, the more money you can make if you're monetizing. And then also that leads me to more videos means more ad revenue there as well. But I also I would almost call it like a platform release, because I did JTS, which I recommend if you can get with a subscription site. And then I did video on demand, where it's pay per view download. And what I did there was I put the whole show together back to back, kind of like a movie. Mm-hmm. And then my final tier is YouTube, almost like the free release, like a movie would be on free TV kind of thing. And then ultimately we're going to do a DVD with all the with the extras, special features, and that kind of thing. So multi-tiered, any way to get the show out there, continue to build the audience, and ideally make a little bit of money. It's kind of a long, rambling answer, but hopefully that there was a little something in there.
No, I think that was good. Well, because in YouTube, I think if that's your first choice only, I mean, I think when you're starting out, that's going to have to be probably. But
that's kind of what I meant when I said that earlier. Although really YouTube is the 800-pound gorilla. I mean, that's where most people consume their video. Now, there's obviously a lot of debate whether narrative shows can coexist successfully on YouTube with the Daily Graces and
with cat videos.
Yeah, exactly. Although I think that branding, that positioning is actually slowly going away. I mean, I think people are seeing real content on YouTube now, professionally produced content, even the average Joe. But I guess probably from a viral perspective, more people send a viral video that's a cat or a kid, that's talking funny from the dentist or whatever via YouTube.
2 minutes of goats yelling like humans.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
That's my favorite.
And that's the stuff you see on the nightly news. You're not going to see, hey, did you see the episode 10 of Continuum? I mean, that's not going to happen. I'm talking about a viral video
going. If you put a screaming goat on episode Continuum, you might.
I am on a mission to get everyone to have a yelling goat on just about everything.
I like that. That could be a good way to get some press for your show. But yeah,
it would be
ultimately, and there's also a push too, and this kind of factors into the way you release your show. There's a push for longer shows now. People now have more patience and better connections and internet connections and that kind of thing. Because when we did Pink, the episodes were 3 minutes each. Mm-hmm. And then with Exposed, which was a few years later, we crept up to 4 or 5 minutes. And now a lot of people like 8 to 15 minutes. I still don't like the longer ones unless you're on Hulu. But when you're releasing, this is one thing I always remind people, when you're releasing a show on YouTube, you don't want longer episodes if you're trying to make money, because the shorter episodes is you get more ads and you get more ad revenue that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's
at least that's my opinion.
That's why vlogs do so well, because you can make them cheaply and you can make them often, whereas narration you can't make a gazillion different episodes.
Exactly. It's just too cost prohibitive and it just takes too long. Daily Grace can do that daily, and I love her show. But Continuum, I mean, it's kind of like a movie. I mean, we shot Continuum, we shot it like a movie, and we shot it back in 2010, and so it's 2013, so that you can kind of see season one. See, the first bit did come out in late 2011. We premiered at Comic-Con, and then, as you mentioned, we did a Facebook run. But then the full run was not until 2012, and then 2013 for season 2. So it just takes time.
Mm-hmm.
Partly because we're on low budgets too. So if we had full budgets that were able to sustain us to work on it full time, it wouldn't have taken that long. But that's not the case typically in web series. And I would probably say most web series creators are working a day job and doing their web series on the side.
I think so. You know, and I think some people would like for narration to see half-hour episodes, maybe an hour long, even like on Netflix. But you know, to do that on an indie budget is just impossible.
Yeah, that's a good point, because let's just say you have enough money. Like with Continuum, again, it's the total running time of both season 1 and season 2 will be about 90 minutes. Well, we could have edited it all together and put it out like that, but then it's just one show, one episode. So to break it apart, kind of like going back to the release schedule, helps, I think.
You build momentum.
Yeah, exactly.
So with Continuum, I haven't seen all of season 2 yet. So I don't know how it ends or anything. I obviously don't want to ruin that, but I'm curious, or do you have plans for season 3 and beyond?
We do not have immediate plans, but once you see the end of the show, there could possibly be a season 3. I would leave that open-ended right now.
Okay.
But knowing that what kind of everything we just said with the cost and the time, and the likelihood is probably it's not going to happen. If it would, it wouldn't be anytime soon. Plus, I'm working on about half a dozen other projects that I want to do.
Okay, I'm going to do a psychic spoiler at the end. There's a scene of her going, all the answers are resolved. And then she looks out of the window and goes, look, a screaming goat. And then to be continued.
That must have been leaked on YouTube. I can't believe you got that.
Everyone needs a yelling goat.
But in space, they can't hear you yell.
Oh, that's right. It's the silent screaming goat.
That's funny. The silence of the lambs.
In space, no one can hear your goat scream.
Oh, I like that.
I just think we found a new...
It's interesting that we had 2 endings for Continuum. One was a more open-ended, and one was a very definite ending. And we ended up going with the more open-ended one for the exact reason you just brought up. If someone wants to come on board and pay for a season 3, we would, open arms here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so to all of you listening out there, if you like Continuum,
well, I'll tell you,
money.
JTS is hoping in the future to be able to fund some original shows, just like Netflix, on a much smaller scale. And they would be a great place to do that, because I know Continuum's been one of their more popular shows. But that takes money there as well. And I know they've been trying to get some outside private equity funds, and who knows, maybe it could happen.
I hope it does. I like to see that. I'm almost kind of surprised that web series, like Hollywood kind of snatches up an options rights to like books. Definitely comic books has been huge last 10, 20 years. And other things, I'm kind of surprised they don't snatch up web series almost. Maybe they will someday. I don't know if we want them to snatch it up.
I think that's happened, and it's happening a little bit more. Probably it did around 2008 more than it did the last few years, and then it's kind of happening again. Or what's probably happening more is established filmmakers like the Bryan Singers of the world are pitching or shows or getting shows pitched to them, and instead of making a direct to DVD or direct to VOD movie, they make it a web series, and then they take it like Halo and those kind of things, or H+. Because more or less that was the way I perceived it anyway. I don't think I'd read this anywhere. I believe Halo was, but it was originally a movie pitched to Bryan Singer, H+, and they decided to do a web series, and then they release it online, and then they still can sell it as a DVD or movie in the end.
We actually interviewed John Cabrera, the co-creator of it.
Taryn O'Neill knows him, but I do not.
Mm-hmm.
But so like Halo, Halo again is a great example. That was funded by Microsoft, and I think they spent in the neighborhood of $10 million, which is the most expensive web series that I know of. But then in the end, they put it back in and make it and sell it as a movie too.
Mm-hmm. Battlestar Galactica: Blood and Chrome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Same thing.
exactly. And then the Mortal Kombat, that stuff as well.
Mm-hmm.
And those are all they look great. Those are all high end shows, especially for the web.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Before we go, is there anything else you would like to let people know about, or where to find your current projects and upcoming projects online?
Yeah, I'd love to again plug Phobia. It'll be released all over the country and Canada on video on demand and iTunes and PlayStation and Xbox. And then we have a Facebook page for that, facebook.com/Phobia the movie. And then Continuum is rolling out right now on YouTube. If you search Continuum, it'll probably come up with the Sci-Fi Show, meaning the Sci-Fi Network show. But just look for our show. You'll see Melanie Murkowski most likely on a still on YouTube. And that is rolling out right now. We just released, it's on Sci-Fi Riot and then also Continuum the series. That's the YouTube channels. And then Morganville will be coming to a computer screen in your house in about 4, 5, 6 months.
Excellent. Or on a bus or in a car, any more tablets and everything
You're
else.
going to turn into a Dr. Seuss rhyme.
I was almost there.
You can watch it on your computer screen or on a bus or in a car. You can watch it wherever you are.
Hi, I'm Ben Days, executive producer of 8 and 5, the web series, and you're listening to GenreTainment.
Well, a big yelling goat thanks to Blake for chatting with us, and we look forward to seeing the rest of Season 2 of Continuum, the film Phobia, and the series Morganville.
So that's it for today's GenreTainment. We'll be back soon with all new guests from our favorite films, TV shows, novels, and web series. And coming up in our next episode, we have the stars of the feature film Gamer's Hands of Fate.
In a few weeks, director John Badham joins us to discuss his book, John Badham on Directing. He directed classic films like Short Circuit, War Games, Saturday Night Fever, and more. Click on over to our website at GenreTainment.com or our Facebook page to send us a question for either guests. We also have the game designers that brought us Mutants and Masterminds and DC Adventures coming to the show.
And that's just a few of the many fun guests we have coming up.
And don't forget, you can also check out the other great shows on the Sci-Fi Pulse radio channel like SFP Now, The Roundtable, and more.
Until next time.